Coming up next on Arizona Horizons Journalists Roundtable, Arizona's congressional delegation considers the president's plans for military intervention in Syria, and Governor Brewer appeals the rejection of federal aid for the Yarnell Hill fire. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining me tonight are Rebecca Sanders of the Arizona Republic, Howard Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Dan Nowicki, also of the Arizona Republic. Congress is facing a major decision regarding the Obama administration's plans for military intervention in Syria. And of course, if Congress is facing it, our congressional delegation is facing it. Talk to us about the dynamics. What are you hearing out there?
That's right. We've got a pretty divided House delegation. We've got a couple of Republicans who are against it, and then a bunch of Democrats who are undecided. Interesting comments that we heard this week from Matt Salmon. He's a Republican. He's on the Foreign Affairs Committee and was briefed in conference calls and even went back to D.C. this week for hearings. He says he sees no U.S. interest in a strike, and so he can't support it. And then we've got Ann Kirkpatrick. She's on the Armed Services Committee, and she said that she's also not feeling supportive because she said she's seen the soldiers that have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, but she's still holding out a little bit. It's interesting to see people wavering.
Mm-hmm. And the issue is they're also testing their own districts. I mean, to a certain extent, even Senator McCain's little gaggle this week in Phoenix and again in Tucson, and then tomorrow, I guess, up in Prescott. The public is not sold on this. The public is a little war-weary. They seem to remember some president, who could that be, talking about weapons of mass destruction, and we have absolute proof and everything else. They see the bodies coming back. They look at this. They're saying, what is our interest here? The other part of it, quite frankly, is, okay, this was the red line. You're killing your people with gas, as opposed to killing them with bullets, which we were okay with.
I think Howie's being a little bit diplomatic there. I think when he says that the public's a little war-weary, from the sense I get is they're very much opposed. I think Senator McCain and Flake, contrary to the congressional delegation, they're both on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, both supported the resolution that passed Wednesday, 10-7. Only 3 Republicans supported it, 2 of which were McCain and Flake. And they even acknowledge that this is, sometimes can be a hard sell to the public. Senator McCain at his town hall this week in Phoenix, both before and after when he was talking to the media, said he called for the president to make a national address, which is now going to happen. But he said, really, the only guy who can really sell this to the public is the president.
But at least so far, it's not happening. Obama has not been able to move the needle. Polls nationally and as well as one recently here in Arizona show at least half, if not more, of the American public doesn't want to get involved.
Well, they don't see, and the point is they don't see not only what's the upside, what's the end game here. I mean, the president's initial speech, and we all watched it, was it's going to be limited in scope, it's not going to involve boots on the ground, and to a certain extent, and it's not going to involve regime change. So what is our point here if we're not trying to change the dynamics over there? Why are we doing this? Just to lob a few missiles in to say, see, we told you so?
And that's part of it is I think the public's confused about what the aim of this would be. Are we looking at Syria as sort of the strategic chess piece, or are we looking at it, we're going to just punish this regime and once we do it, right, and once we do it, that'll be it. And
I find that interesting because it seems as though from the administration, whether it's Secretary Kerry or the president himself, we keep hearing much more of punitive language. There is no end game because it doesn't sound like there's much of a game to begin with. There will be no boots on the ground, so we won't be seeing, theoretically, the bodies coming back. The president's saying the U.S. can't ignore when people are killed by chemical weapons, and doing something sends a signal that threatens national security, and yet the public, it sounds like, and certainly the congressional delegation is saying, no, we're not there yet.
Yeah, and you see also that the language has been about not wanting to go in there and do any kind of nation building, as happened to be the case in Afghanistan and Iraq. But even so, I think people are really skeptical in the public and as well as our politicians. And an interesting dichotomy that you'll see between McCain, who's been a very outspoken supporter of this, and our House delegation. Just a few months ago, David Schweikert, a Republican, came out saying that he thought that there was no problem that McCain saw that he didn't feel like he could solve with a bomb or a missile. And, you know, they are clearly not great friends themselves, but that is something that I think even resonates with the American public.
Well, that is kind of, you know, something that's always been intrinsic to McCain's biography. The guy is a hawk. Yeah. He's always been. That's nothing new. I remember 2007, and he was running for president. He was the only guy supporting, you know, what became known as the surge in Iraq, and people are saying, you know, why is McCain doing this? Is there some political calculus? And it seemed like to be the politically dumb thing to do. It's like, no, that's McCain. He's going to like support the surge. He's going to go there every time.
But again, I think he'd do it if he would just say, okay, if we're going to go in there, we're going to arm the right rebels. We haven't figured out who the right rebels are.
McCain has listed. McCain, I've heard him speak on a number of occasions. He does seem to have ready answers for who we would support, what they're made up of. It's a lot of the Free Syrian Army type folks. So he's got those answers in line.
I think he does look at it more like, you know, the strategic chess piece, and
yes,
you know, the Middle East being the chess
and he may
war.
see that more than the president does. The president sees it more as punitive, and again, a signal to Iran, to North Korea, to Hezbollah, and even a number of folks that when we say don't do this, we mean don't do this.
The context for this debate is that Congress has been back home in their districts on recess while this has all been taking place. And a few key members have been called back for briefings. But really the hard lobbying and the information coming to the members may start in earnest next week. And we may not even see a vote on a resolution even for another week after they come back on Monday.
If you look at where the rankings and where they stand, most of them are undecided still in the House.
Yeah, and a lot of it may depend on what happens. You know, the president's at G20. Can he build any support there? Look, the Russians aren't going to support us. China's not going to support us very clearly. We saw what happened in the British Parliament when they had an open debate on that.
The French, you got France.
We do have France, and so we're not going to have to talk about freedom fries. No, thank goodness for that. But again, you know, what kind of coalition can we build? You know, whether it's moral. The other question on a lot of people's minds is where exactly is the Arab League? Where is Saudi Arabia in all this? You know, where are the folks who don't like this? Our allies. Look, Saudis have arms because we've been selling them a heck of a lot of them. So they certainly have the ability to go in and do this.
I know McCain answers that point. He says even though they've been kind of quiet, they have been, the guys, you know, what arms the rebels do have been coming from a lot of those Gulf state neighbors.
Well, and late this afternoon, the White House did put out a joint statement that came from the G20, that came from France, Germany, Saudi Arabia, even Russia, condemning the acts. And so, of course, the White House is going to tout this as some form of cooperation on the yes. part of a coalition, but certainly in yes. terms of putting the pedal to the metal. Yeah,
nasty note to follow. I know. I've seen this.
Right. And another question too, which was brought up, is this whole response to chemical warfare. It's, you know, in the 1980s, we saw chemical warfare. I don't recall a similar debate in Congress over that. There was no, you know, burning desire to go get involved in the Iran-Iraq war that was going on in the 80s, despite the use of chemical warfare.
You were there for the town hall meeting, correct? The one
yeah.
here in mm-hmm. Phoenix. Describe the atmosphere, because it sounded like the audience was pretty much one-sided. The audience got a little testy. Maybe the senator may have gotten a little testy at times. Surprise, surprise. Right. But what did you see there?
Yeah, I would say it was. I'll be careful how I choose my words, because McCain objected to the use of the term overwhelmingly against the war, because he noted there were some supporters there, but I would say definitely it leaned heavily against getting involved, and it came from all different directions. It was kind of a much more diverse crowd than you see at a lot of McCain town halls, and I've been to 100 of them probably over the years, not only in Arizona but on the presidential campaign trail. And you saw a lot of Syrian Americans on both sides of the issue. Some saying don't get involved. Some say, you know, do get involved. there was actually a shouting match. I've seen the clip on CNN where there's a gentleman saying, like, "You can't shut me up here. This is America." And he was actually yelling at another member of the crowd, another former Syrian, who was calling, accusing him of lying. He was making his remarks. And he's like, "That's a lie. That's a lie." So it was a very electric atmosphere. Definitely, I would say the tone was against it, and there was the usual anti-war crowd that you would see. At any kind of a war protest, but there's also a lot of Syrian Americans who are speaking up.
And what's interesting is, the only time we've gotten this before has been immigration, same sort of thing. And what's fascinating to watch
What
on
is
the
that,
national
immigration?
yeah,
I haven't heard anything.
And that's the point. All of a sudden, the whole national push over immigration and maybe doing something on that has been shoved to the back burner, and so any hope perhaps of getting the House to finally get around to that has been, well, gee, Mr. President, you'd like this resolution here, you'd like to convince us of that. And, he may have essentially bombed, if you will, his own immigration plan.
Well, that's the thing. It's like a big fear is if Congress rejects this authorization, I mean, that's going to be a major blow to, whatever remaining political clout the president has in his second term. And there's the fear is it's going to really embolden these House Republicans who are maybe on the fence on immigration. Maybe, you can persuade these guys, for the good of the National Party. And if they see this, second term in, kind of in full rout mode, they're going to be emboldened to say, like, why do I need to stick my neck out?
Take a hypothetical here, though. Let's say they are emboldened and they say no, and they are emboldened, and all of a sudden they say no, and Syria continues and escalates the use of chemical weapons. Does saying no, again, when the president first came out with this, he was very strong in saying, I think actually it was Kerry who said, we will not be spectators to slaughter. And really the question is, if you don't use American influence on something like this with, we've seen the pictures of the women and children, the bodies piled up. If you don't use it on this, then what do you use it on?
But that's the problem of drawing red lines.
Right.
How many bodies have we seen piled up in this war? In Iraq, with Saddam Hussein, in Afghanistan.
100,000 dead, I think.
Exactly. So the problem becomes the president needs to make the case that somehow chemical use is worse than bullets, than bombs, than drones, and everything else.
Well,
and he hasn't made that case. I mean, people don't understand. I mean, they understand what chemical warfare is, but it somehow hasn't resonated.
Well, you've seen the White House officials try to extrapolate it out to, if we don't act here, Iran or North Korea might be emboldened. But I think that's hard for people to buy.
Well, okay, but let me tell you, as sort of my generation, we were told the domino theory. Do you remember Vietnam? If Vietnam falls, then goes Cambodia and Thailand and the whole Southeast Asia, and all of a sudden the commies are going to be marching in Manila. Didn't happen. So we've heard this domino theory before, and it makes a lot of people very skeptical.
Absolutely.
And his last point on this regarding Congress in general, but the Arizona delegation in particular, strange bedfellows here as far as Republicans and Democrats disagreeing on using military influence, I should say.
Well, sure. You've got Raul Grijalva, one of our most liberal, if not the most liberal, House member in Arizona.
In the country.
Indeed in the country, siding with someone like Salmon or Schweiker, who are quite conservative. It's been interesting. There's been a number of those votes this year, and it's interesting to see the different reasons that people are motivated. They're not the same.
Let me go a step beyond that. Boehner obviously has said he'd sort of try to sell this. But Boehner has had a problem all year as the folks on his right keep trying to knock him off. The Ted Cruzes, if you will, of the world, and the Rand Pauls of the world. And so it's going to be interesting with Boehner, how much is he willing to put on the line in this fight?
This week emerged all this chatter that, well, Boehner may be thinking about stepping down anyway next year. So.
Well, there you go. Real quickly, we've talked about McCain. Flake, who was on this program really before this flared up, but things were starting to simmer here. We talked quite a bit about Syria. He seemed very noncommittal. He seemed I need to know more, I need to hear more, I need to see more. Sounds like, during the committee hearing, Secretary Kerry kind of took him to the woodshed a little bit about constitutional requirements, and B, is he now starting to force a little bit of the issue?
Well, yeah, to the point about Kerry, Flake asked, he asked Kerry, point blank, what if Congress says no, and what do you do? What's the president going to do? And Kerry said, well, I don't know what the president's going to do, but we believe we have the authority now with or without Congress, and we'll still have the authority with or without Congress. So he's like, well, if you have the authority, why not strike as opposed to waiting 3 weeks, signaling to the Assad regime that we're going to attack you. They're already supposedly moving assets, dispersing troops into the civilian neighborhoods, taking kind of preemptive actions like that. And the Secretary of State responded that, I'm surprised a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee would be asking why we go to Congress. And, Flake said, well, you didn't in Libya. So, in Libya, you didn't think you had to come to Congress. And so I guess I think the calculus on the White House's part is that, well, it'd be tougher to make the case that this is some kind of an emergency in Syria, that we have to act. Although the War Powers Resolution probably does give him the leeway if he wanted to do it. It says you have to consult with Congress within 60 to 90 days, I believe is what the language says.
And we should mention a recent poll, Scutari CSLAC, the PR firm, had a poll out, 51% of Arizonans, these are likely voters, against, 28% support, 21% unsure.
Well, let me use the Stephen Colbert line. It's amazing that 28% of Arizonans know where Syria is in the first place.
Well, these are likely voters, so these are folks who know where their polling place is, too. Yes. So let's give them a little bit of credit here. Independents, though, oppose military action 2-1, and Republicans opposing military action by 67%. Interesting numbers there.
Oh, I know.
All right, let's move on here. We've talked about this before because we expected the state to appeal this rejection of Yarnell Hill fire aid. The governor went ahead and did this. FEMA going to reconsider this at all?
Well, I think they'll certainly go through the motions. The funny thing is that the appeal, while it's addressed to the president, goes back to the same District 9 FEMA director who rejected in the first place. Of course, she will then forward it up to her boss, who signed the original rejection in the first place. The problem that the governor has is the laws are pretty clear. What constitutes a disaster? And federal disaster aid is based on the inability of state and local governments and volunteer groups to deal with it. Katrina was a disaster. Sandy was a disaster. Yarnell Hill was tragic, and certainly conflating the 19 firefighters makes it even more so. But in terms of the scope, 25, 30 million, that's hardly beyond the capability of a state with a $10 billion budget to deal with.
And FEMA basically saying the severity, the magnitude, not enough for federal aid, and that this is not something that, as you mentioned, state, local, volunteer, the whole 9 yards, not something that they can't handle.
And what's important is when you start digging down the numbers, FEMA is precluded from helping anybody who has insurance. Most of the homes there, the owner-occupied homes, were insured. So you take them out of the equation. Now, there are folks who are underinsured, and perhaps some of their losses count. But again, the problem becomes is when you take care of all that, when you deal with that, the numbers are not that great. And the whole purpose of federal help is to step in where the states cannot.
And we saw Representative Kirkpatrick, along with Representative Gosar and Franks and Sinema, all up there on stage with the governor. And someone had mentioned that Gosar had voted no to previous federal disaster aid. Now he's up there. But is that apples to apples?
No, I don't think so. I think Progress, the liberal blog, was the first to kind of raise this issue. And McCain and Flake also voted against Hurricane Sandy bill. McCain and Flake, say we never opposed a disaster declaration for Hurricane Sandy, nor would we. What we voted against was a $50 billion congressional supplemental appropriations bill that was loaded, according to them, with a lot of non-emergency spending that had nothing to do with Hurricane Sandy. Millions there's like Amtrak subsidies in there, all sorts of other stuff. So they say, I guess for an apples to apples comparison, you'd have to have some kind of a Yarnell Hill $50 billion legislation and fill it with all that other stuff and see if they vote for that or don't vote for it.
The funny part is I asked Representative Gosar, who was also at this little dog and pony show the governor had earlier this week, and I said, well, wait a second, all you Republicans who believe in that the law means what it means, the Constitution what it means what it means. And he said, well, yes, there are rules, but sometimes you have to have exceptions. So even he is conceding that from the black letter purpose of the law, this does not qualify.
An example that it seems like these folks who are pressing for the appeal are using to say that there may be some hope is that the town of West Texas, which not around that same time had the terrible gas explosion, they were denied, appealed, and were recently approved. And so that is one of the things that they're using as an example to say we might be able to change the minds of those same people, but who knows?
Real quickly, before we leave the congressional delegation, obviously with recess in effect and back here, and it was an interesting point you made that it changes the whole dynamic of what's happening in Washington. I mean, this whole thing could turn in an entirely different direction once everyone gets back in their seats and starts getting information. What has a delegation been in? What are they doing? I mean, we had a couple folks on the air here, but what's going on visiting the state? Is immigration big? Are we looking at the copper mine? I mean, what's happening out there?
Depends on the member, how active they are.
Oh, okay.
But immigration, interestingly, has been brought up somewhat, but more by activists and more by people in the audiences. I've seen only one member of our delegation actually schedule an immigration-specific town hall, at least in the House delegation, and that's Grijalva, and he really has nothing to lose there. So I think folks have been
McCain
trying to
and Flake
stay
have
away
both
from
been
that.
emphasizing
Yeah.
immigration.
They have, for sure.
They've been making the rounds of kind of the chamber groups, business groups.
The difference is, having to run every 2 years versus every 6. I mean, what you're seeing is a lot of constituent services. You've
and
got
representing a state versus
Sure.
a political
I mean,
drawn.
Kirsten Sinema's going to run a 10K for women veterans who are homeless, things like that. This is all local constituent service stuff. Hey, look at me. I'm your congressman.
Well, it was interesting you mentioned Sinema, Representative Sinema, because she had just come back from Afghanistan, and this was, this is quite an event for a representative visiting Arizona troops there and the whole. And you get back, and all of a sudden Syria blows, and we're asking about Syria, not Afghanistan. So
well, it's the same with McCain. He's been making the rounds, really trying to keep the pressure on immigration. And at his town hall on the other day, I think he had 2 questions in an hour and 10-minute meeting on immigration.
Interesting. All right, before we go, Howie, the requisite medical marijuana question,
Dude.
asked, of course, to you.
Yes.
Smoking, eating, okay. Soda pop, hard candy, not okay. Huh?
Well, look, the voters approved medical marijuana in 2010, no question. The language also contemplates food products. But here's the thing. State Health Director Will Humble did a little digging in the law. There's a definition of marijuana, which is also defined in the Medical Marijuana Act, and a definition of cannabis, which the law defines, curiously enough, essentially as the hash oil, the THC, the tetrahydro, whatever it is. I've never been able to pronounce that. The psychoactive substance. He said that because of the way the law is crafted, you want to make a brownie with ground up pieces of marijuana the way I did in college, no problem. You want to strip out the hash oil and make a lollipop with no pieces of plant. Now you've got a problem. And it is thrown a real monkey wrench into the whole issue for people who do not want to smoke it.
I mean, you're basically saying if the lollipop shows a little fleck of the plant, it might be okay. If it doesn't, it might not be. We're talking felony here? Or
We're talking felony because it remains illegal, even for medical marijuana recipients under state law, to use something that does not have the plant, the flowers, the leaves. And so you're really dancing on the head of a pin here, but the law is fairly clear. So the director, in fact, is just this week, he said, I don't want to be in the position of putting out a cookbook on how you can make this stuff, but to a certain extent, we may have the Will Humble cookbook of what you can and what you can't make with medical marijuana.
Storm the stores for that one. All right, we got about 30 seconds left here. Very quickly, do you think, just off the top of your head now, from where we sit right now, do you think Congress will vote for military intervention?
I don't.
You don't think so? What do you think?
I'd say yes on the Senate. I would say right now no on the House.
And Howie, what do you think?
I'm tend to lean with Rebecca, except for the fact that are they going to leave the president hanging out? A lot of it may depend on what we hear out of Syria for the next couple of weeks. We've got folks saying we're going to bomb embassies, we're going to bomb Israel. That may help galvanize things.
All right, we'll stop it right there. Thank you all very much. Monday on Arizona Horizon, we'll hear about the Mayo Clinic's plans to open a stem cell laboratory, and we'll learn about a foundation that empowers women to transform their lives. That's Monday evening, 5:30 and 10 on Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.